This panel will look at transportation and land use issues in the upcoming General Assembly. Like with the other panels, I'm going to give a quick overview of very high level of some of the issues we'll be watching, very abbreviated high level overview of things we'll be watching, and then we'll drill down and have the panel focus on the proposed Central Indiana Regional Transportation Plan and the expected enabling legislation for that topic. First, let me start with on the conservation funding side of the state budget bill. The Hoosier Environmental Council and our partners in the Indiana Conservation Alliance are going to be promoting a request for a $20 million biennial appropriation for land acquisition, and as well as funding support for Clean Water Indiana. On the land acquisition side is the Indiana Heritage Trust, which is Indiana's landmark land conservation program that buys new lands for state forests and state parks and fish and wildlife areas, nature preserves, and whatever you like to do outdoors, you've probably been to one of the sites that the Heritage Trust is protecting. And it's been very lightly funded the past couple budget years, so we hope to see that trend reversed. On Clean Water Indiana, this is a program that provides assistance to landowners to put in place land management practices that help protect our water quality, like filter strips and grass waterways and riparian forest buffers, and it's been a very effective program over the years. Now let's move into transportation. Also part of the budget bill coming up is the two-year budget for the Indiana Department of Transportation. Their budget includes funding for roads and highways, a modest amount of funding for transit, and a very scant amount for rail funding, passenger and freight rail. On the topic of highway funding, the preliminary numbers that we're seeing from the Department of Transportation are going to be very eye-opening to people about the decline in available road funding for the coming biennium and future years. INDOT's numbers indicate a total funding decline in the next biennium for highways of about 23%, and from the state share of that funding, over 40%. So for projects like the fiscally challenged Interstate 69, it's not going to find much help in the coming INDOT budget. So let's ask the question, is Indiana investing enough money in transportation alternatives? And I think this chart speaks for itself. Over the past several years, including fiscal year 2012, about 97% of our transportation spending, somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion a year, has gone to roads, building new roads and then maintaining and repairing the roads and bridges we already have. In the remaining 3% is the funding for transit and for other types of modes of transportation, such as bicycle and pedestrian facilities, multimodal planning, safe routes to schools, things like that. Out of that 3% for transit is the state share of support for our 66 transit systems statewide. There was a significant change in the 2011-2013 budget bill related to state support for transit funding, in that the budget bill eliminated the long-standing sales tax dedication that supported the Public Mass Transportation Fund, but the budget bill did keep in the current level of line item appropriation for those transit agencies. The goal of transit advocates around the state is to restore that dedicated funding at a level appropriate to support our existing transit agencies. Let's talk about passenger rail. Unlike our friends and neighbors in the state of Illinois and in the state of Michigan, which are working to complete their share of the Midwest high-speed rail network by completing railroad improvements between Chicago and St. Louis and Chicago and Detroit, Indiana will do well to simply maintain some of its current Amtrak service. Under federal law, Amtrak will have to discontinue support for short-distance routes like the Chicago to Indianapolis Hoosier State route, if the states do not step forward and help with the operating costs. This means that rail service from Indianapolis to Chicago will be reduced to just 3 times a week. So now let's take a closer look at why we should be investing in public transit. And you'll hear from our panel, and perhaps from a video we could show at break, that transit is cool. And there are these cool stickers, and if you don't have one, be sure you get one back there in the back about that you support transit. But anyway, we certainly think that Indiana should invest more money in transit and transportation alternatives. One of our themes today is climate change and transportation. The transportation sector is the second largest contributor to American greenhouse gases, just behind the electric power industry. In Indiana in 2010, the transportation sources emitted 43 million tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. If we use more efficient forms of transportation like rail and bus transit, we will reduce our dependence on oil, save gasoline, and save consumers money and emit fewer greenhouse gases. We'll also have cleaner air if we reduce the number of motor vehicles on our roads. About 60% of the ozone pollution in central Indiana comes from motor vehicles. And we know that ozone is a serious human health hazard. There are other reasons why we should invest more in transportation alternatives, and that's that the future in America is changing. Our demographics are changing, our behavior is changing, and it's happening. And if we don't move away from our emphasis on reliance on roads, then we are simply not providing needed transportation services to all of our population. Our population is getting older. Baby boomers like myself are going to represent about 20% of Indiana's population in a couple of decades. Younger generations are losing interest in driver's licenses and purchasing cars, and we've seen a big drop in the number of 18-year-olds getting licenses over the past 30 years. And along with high gas prices, all of these things combine to create a historic decline in driving nationally. You can see from the peak in June of 2005, nationally, our vehicle miles traveled are down nearly 9%. In Indiana, the decline is not quite as dramatic, but we have, after decades of growth in miles traveled, have leveled off. One result is that more people are demanding and will demand public transportation. We've seen ridership increases on transit systems throughout the country, including the second highest national transit ridership ever in 2011. Indigo's ridership has been going up, even though it is a very challenged system. And Amtrak as well has seen record ridership in the past couple of years.